In Module 2, Lesson 10, we'll start our study of multiplying integers with a round of our integer game. So you're being asked to draw 4 integers, and I will suggest in your integers, perhaps you get a 3, and then a -2, and then maybe a -5, and finally a 4. What you'll notice on your sheet is that underneath the third card we have a star. The star indicates that that number will need to be repeated in part B 3 times. So really what we have is 3, -2, -5, -5, -5, and 4. Then we'll continue on using our cards from part B to answer the questions. So looking at our cards, we can see that we could write a product that describes these 3 matching cards. Because when you have repeated addition, you actually have multiplication. So we will write -5. Better put that in parentheses so we're not confused by the negative sign. It's not subtraction. -5 times -5 times -5. Oh, sorry, -5 times 3. Then we can write the expression that represents how those cards change the score by writing the repeated addition. -5 plus -5 plus -5, which would be -15. So 3 times -5 equals -15. So in part C, I will suggest to you another set of numbers. -1, -1 in our first card, 5 in our second, -3 in the third, and 4 in the fourth card. And I'm going to select our fourth card as the starred card. And I'll use an asterisk for my star. So when we go down to part D, we would be doing the same thing. We would have -1, 5, -3, and finally our star card, which will be in all of the starred card spaces. And we'll use our cards from part D to answer the questions. Write a product that describes the 5 matching cards. That would be 4 times 5. And an expression showing how those starred cards change our score would be the repeated addition 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, since we are adding 4 5 times. And the equation that shows the relationship between those two expressions, 4 times 5 equals 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. The integer that represents that total change to the score would be 20, and our equation that relates the product and how it affects the score would be 5 times 4 equals 20. Multiplying a positive integer card is repeated addition of a positive integer card, and it increases your score. However, multiplying a negative integer card is repeated addition of the negative integer card, and it would decrease your score. In example 2, we're going to look at the product of a negative integer and a positive integer. So if all the 4s from the playing hand on the right are discarded, how will the score be affected? If all of the 4s are discarded, we would actually be taking away 4 and taking away 4 and taking away 4, which would be 3 discards of 4. Please notice that we're representing the discard as a negative. Discarding 3 times the number 4 will result in a negative 12 change in our score. To get the same change in your score, you could also add 3 negative 4s. So 3 times negative 4 is also negative 12. We can see then that adding a value multiple times has the same effect as removing the opposite value the same number of times. And we can show that mathematically as negative 3 times 4 is equal to 3 times negative 4. So if we discard, remember, negative 3, if we discard the number 4 3 times, it will have the same effect on our score as if we actually drew a negative 4 3 times. Now if we look at example 3, if the matching cards from the playing hand on the right are discarded, how will this hand's score be affected? And we would model that using an equation. So all of our matching cards would be the negative 2s, and there are 4 of them. If we were to remove a negative 2 from this score, it would increase our score by 2. So each time we remove a negative 2 from our set of cards, our score is actually going to increase by 2. If we removed all 4 of the negative 2s, that would cause our score to increase by 8. So we can say that negative 4 times negative 2 equals 8. If we do 4 discards, of a -2, it will increase our score by 8. The 4 matching cards that we could add to those pictured to get the same change in score would be 4 2s. So we can see that 4 times 2 equals 8, and that would have the same change in our score as discarding 4 -2s. So seeing how each play affects the score, we can say that -4 times -2 is equal to 4 times 2, since the change in the value of our hand is exactly the same. Adding a value multiple times has the same effect as removing the opposite value the same number of times. So if we look at our conclusions in examples 2 and 3, what we find is that the product of two integers is equal to the product of their opposites. Product of two integers is equal to the product of their opposites. In other words, removing 2 -4s is the same as adding 2 4s, and adding 3 -5s is the same as removing 3 5s. We'll explore it further in our next lesson as well.